Hi, this is your coach, Joe Lucas, and welcome to this episode of the Magellan Network Show. Hey, in this episode, what I'm going to do is reach into the mailbag and pick one question, one note that I got via LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and it was from a new advisor, somebody who was coming into the industry, sort of like a second career. They served in our military for about 8 years, and they're at a major firm. We're not getting into particulars because I want to keep things somewhat confidential. And this person reached out because they're about a year into our game and they're struggling and they're getting frustrated. And they wanted, they don't know that this is the right place for them, which scares me because, if you really think about where we are as an industry, as a profession, we have a very big brain drain going on. The average age of advisors, depending on whose data points, somewhere between 56 and 58 years. And obviously, that means that the average is way over on that side. And, we're not attracting the young people like we used to. When I became a coach back in the early 90s, big firms had multiple training classes. And I'm not saying it was done the right way, but at least you were attracting people, out of college and things like that. And, I think we struggle with that now. So what I want to do in this episode is I'm going to give that person, and I let them know that this episode's coming out and it's directed towards them. But I think all of us can get some really good tips and pointers. So what I'm going to say to this person is basically, and we'll just call him John for lack of a better term. So John, I think in your game, a year in the business, major firm, and you're struggling is, first off, and I'll make these statements and everybody can take it the way they want. I think most firms do a barely adequate job at new advisor training. And when you think about the job they do, it's primarily focused around a couple different core competencies, right? Number one, get them licensed, right? Number two, get them to understand, products or platforms and things like that. Understand compliance for sure, right? So we don't run into issues. But do they really sit there and help an advisor structure how they need to go about doing things? And the answer, in my experience, is in quarter centuries, no. In fact, most firms do a terrible job at it. So here's what you need to do, John. Number one is that you need to make sure that you start the day each and every day with your morning ritual. We call it in our game, we call it our Magellan Morning 8. We have an 8-step process that I teach my clients and members of Network to execute each and every business day, and we also have a version of that on weekends. So number one, you don't look at this as a job. Right? There's no job here. Okay, this is a career at worst, a business at best. Right? And I like the idea of being in business. Even though your business card may have a national brand name, big firm on it, at the end of the day, you're still responsible for your success. All right. So number one, how do you start your day? Number two, I just mentioned it, take responsibility for your success. It is easy to sit there and blame others. It is easy to say, well, my branch manager does this. I don't get any support, compliance. I mean, look, you can create a list of why you're not successful. And people do that. All right. So number one, there's always going to be something that gets in your way of moving forward. In my career, I've yet to see a situation where we've got utopian conditions, right? In other words, compliance goes on vacation for 6 months. The markets are great. I got a budget. I mean, it just doesn't exist. So what you've got to do is embrace the struggle of our game, embrace the suck in essence, because that's what it is. Everybody who puts their plan together for the first time, everybody who ever's gotten into this business and said, "Oh, I'm just going to here's my game plan for the first 5 years of my career," I guarantee you, none of those plans survive the first 6 months, because then reality hits and you're smacked down. Right? So you got to understand you're playing this for the long game, and the frame of reference I'll use is, like I said, we're in business, right? So you have your business. You have P&L responsibility, you have rainmaking responsibility, you have fulfillment responsibilities. It's your game, right? And then the firm provides you resources, right? Office, administrative support, technology. We're not going to get into all that in this episode. But at the end of the day, you got to think of this as a long game. And so what a lot of people do is they get in here. Well, first of all, the industry does a really crappy job at position. We kind of make it sound like really exciting and you're going to make all this money and da-da-da. Where what we really need to be saying is this. it's going to suck for the first 3 to 5 years. But if you do this right, for the next 30 to 40 years, you're going to be in a great place. But you got to get through the first 3 to 5 years. And I think if we were positioning people like that, first of all, you attract a different person. And number two, they would have their mindset in a certain place versus having these unrealistic expectations. All right. So John, in your case, you're 1 year into this. You've got to go ahead and say, I got another 48 months to go ahead and really drive this thing. And look, man, if that means you're going to eat ramen noodles, you're going to eat ramen noodles, brother. That's just the way it is. And you got to realize that in our game, and I've got clients that make millions of dollars a year. I mean, like take home W-2 stuff, millions. They didn't have to invest $1 million in a franchise. They didn't have to hire, 15 or 30 employees, right? They didn't have to go take on $500,000 debt load. So when you frame it versus other business opportunities, so let's just call this, let's look at this as a business opportunity. I'm going to come in, and I know your firm pays you for the first couple of years, so you're getting a little salary. You're starving on it. I get it, but they're paying you. You didn't have to go $500,000 in the hole to buy a franchise. You don't need 30 or 40 employees. And if you do it properly, you can do it anywhere you want, and it's highly profitable. You don't have to have a large footprint and everything. So change your frame, how you're looking at this game, and understand that if you compare it to other businesses, we're in a sweet spot. This is like the business to be in, as far as I'm concerned. That's number one. So, morning, change your frame of reference, timelines, right? 3, make every day count. So if you're in your game on what we call a tactical day, you make sure that you have your contacts, who you got to schedule for meetings. You got to get out there and look in your game, because you're in startup mode. Man, you got to be 15 to 25 conversations a day. Now, that could be an email conversation. That could be a conversation through LinkedIn. It could be out and about at networking events and business things and stuff like that. Whatever you need to do, depending on when you're watching this episode, we leave them up on YouTube forever. You may even have by now texting opportunities, right? So you can actually go ahead and do some things like that. Bottom line is, if you're not trying to connect with 15 to 25 people a day in where you are, it's going to be a challenge for you to be successful, right? So I would be very, very clear on that. So morning, right? Frame, timeline, right? Psychology, and then the day. The other game, if I were you, I'd be making friends with all the advisors who are probably going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, this is strategic in nature, and I understand that. Like, you're not gonna hook up with some person and then you're gonna buy their business in the next 180 days, most likely. However, you go ahead and create these situations, these longer term relationships, when somebody wants to go ahead and maybe not even jump out of our game 100%. I've helped structure deals where I've got a client that'll come in and joint venture on a sleeve. So if an advisor has like 300 or 400 households, the reality is they probably know 150 really well. There's probably 200 to 250 they don't know really well, if at all. And what's wrong with doing a joint venture on that part of the business, right? So it's not a partnership, it's a joint venture. So I think there's some things you can do there strategically to go ahead and make that happen. Now, the game here is 80-20. So you need to spend 80% of your time on tactical business development, right? That's your contacts, that's looking to help other people, and then 80%. So 20% I want on strategic business development. That's like your centers of influence, like CPAs, attorneys. And what I want you to think about, because you're still a pretty young guy, is that I don't want you to go, let me rephrase that. Not that I don't want you to go. I think it would be better for you to not try to go to the senior partners of the CPA and law firms, but go to the senior associates, because when you're running your game at a high level, guess where they're going to be? They're going to be, running those shops, and you'll have a 5 or 10 year relationship with that. I've seen more than a handful of my clients, because most of my clients are with me for at least 15 years. Some of them with me 25 years. And what happens is that, they kind of elevate, you build these long-term relationships because you're kind of a peer, right? And you nurture them over years, if not decades. And then they're immeasurable in terms of the value to your success, right? But that, again, is strategic. So we want to be careful around that. So what's the next thing we need to do? It is easy to get suckered into work, and the concept of work. So you need to take care of your body. You need to take care of your mind. So that means that we reinvest in gym memberships, personal trainers, and look, I know you may not have the budget, but take care of yourself. Right? You need to really do that. This is a business of mental, physical, and emotional energy. You need to be in condition. I'm not saying you have to go run do an Ironman, but you need to have energy to go ahead and drive your results each and every day. And if you're dealing with people at a high level, it's going to take a toll, man. It's going to, you're going to be giving your energy in those meetings, in those phone calls, or in those interactions. And you want to make sure that you're in really good shape for that. Now, as far as feeding your mind, what I want you to do is make sure you reinvest a minimum of 10% of your income. So right now, it's not that much, right? It's maybe 10%, maybe is literally like, couple $1,000s a year. But I want you to go, and I know it's going to be hard, and I get that. And it's like, well, I do that or I don't do that. Look, you are the product. Take 10% and reinvest back yourself. I often wonder, as an industry and as a profession, what would have happened if from day one everybody had this? It was a rule. It was like almost like a FINRA rule. Hey, you got to take 10%. You got to reinvest it back in yourself. Education, coaching, conferences, training, make you a better version of yourself or the best version of yourself. What would happen as a profession if we were to do that from day one? So start that process now. Maybe for you that means I can buy a couple of books or audio books, or maybe I can attend a seminar here or there. But get in the habit of reinvesting back in yourself. A lot of the guys that I end up working with after 20 or 30 years in this game, they're like, we're not saying they're starting over, but they all say the same thing. I wish I had these habits 20 years ago. So go ahead and put that in there and make that happen. All right. I think that's going to be critically important. The next thing you need to do, John, is just understand that this is a business of being uncomfortable. Now, because of your military service, chances are you've done a lot of uncomfortable things in your life. So I need you to take that component of your identity and bring it here, right? So when it sucked there, and that was like physically sucky, here it's going to be mentally sucky, right? So you're going to get rejected, you're going to have failure, you're going to have to engage in people at a different level, and you just got to, you got to get your head around that and do a great job with it. And then the last thing I'd say is that, like I said, 5-year window, you're 1 year into the game, is that do not burn out. So the other thing you need to do is make sure that I know I know part of your brain's going to say I can't afford and I need to do and stuff like that. The problem is you can't roll the wheel down to the hub. So you're going to have to take some time. I'm not saying you have to go on a cruise or take your family to Disneyland or anything like that, but you need to make sure that you get some mental breaks to recharge the battery. It's really, really important. Even if that's a staycation, you need to go ahead and do that. It's critically important. So many advisors just grind themselves down. Number one, because they don't think they deserve the time off. Number two, they don't think they can afford the time off. And yet 20 years later, they're still in the same boat. So don't make that mistake. I think that's incredibly important. The other thing I would say is, as far as like, mental diet, right? What you put in your mind, do not become a market head. All right. And what I mean by that is don't eat, sleep, breathe the markets and the economy. That will kill most people these days. You need to get outside of this. So our industry does, we get very myopic, right? Because everybody kind of operates in a certain way. I want you to read business books, not about how to be a better financial advisor. I want you to go to conferences that have nothing to do with being financial advisors. Tape programs, videos, YouTubes, whatever. Don't get so locked into, I'm just going to learn everything I can about being a financial advisor, because what's going to happen is it will get you very myopic, and it'll create a certain frame, and it won't allow you to be creative. One of the strengths that I have, never being a financial advisor, which shocks a lot of people that I can coach them for at the level that I do, is A, I'm very observant, B, I've got a very good memory, and C, I always look at things outside of our industry and say, how do I deploy them here? How do I modify them for this game inside of what we're doing, all right? So I want you to, and then the last thing I'm going to say to you, actually, there's two more things. And number one is that I know you have about, I think you said about 20 or 30 clients in your first year, which is great. So obviously people trust you, so you've validated that concept. But two things. Number one, make sure at minimum you have a balance sheet on each and every one of them, or net worth statement, if not a full-blown financial plan. You want to always make sure you're looking to optimize and where things are. And then it's never too early in a career, never, ever, ever too early in the career to really get the referral and introduction mindset. So what I want you to do is you're talking to your clients, remind them that you're open for business, remind them that you're here to serve, remind them that you want them to feel like you're a resource to their family, friends, people that they know, and make sure you repeat that and reiterate that consistently and constantly in your conversations with your clients. That is critically important, okay? And then the last thing, my gift to you. Because you took initiative and you reached out to me on LinkedIn, I'm going to give you a 1-year membership in Magellan Network on me, comped. So all you need to do, my friend, is reach back out to me, and we're going to get you inside the game. And that'll be my gift to you. Number one, for reaching out to me, but also thank you for your service to our country. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Magellan Network Show. And if you have any questions, please reach out, coachjoe.guru. And if you want to see our Magellan Network game, magellannetwork.net. Until next time, it's Coach Joe Lukacs saying, have a great week. See you soon. So there you have it. If you really enjoyed watching this episode, go ahead and subscribe to the Magellan Network Show with Coach Joe here on YouTube. And remember, I'm always here to help you become a better entrepreneur, business owner, and financial advisor. With that, I'll see you next time on the Magellan Network Show with me, Coach Joe. Take care and goodbye.